Hello, my name is Ren, and I am a survivor of Munchausen by proxy abuse, as well as an advocate for Munchausen by proxy awareness and education. For those of you who don't know what Munchausen by proxy is, it's a disorder and a form of abuse in which someone will inflict fake illnesses onto others in an effort to gain attention, sympathy, validation, control, or sometimes even monetary compensation. Many people probably know it as what Gypsy Rose went through or other popular culture references, especially recently, but let me assure you it is way more common than people can even imagine, and a lot of people don't know the full extent of what it entails. You probably came from my TikTok where I share my own experiences with Munchausen by proxy, but if you don't, please go check out my TikTok as there is a lot of resources over there for you to see. If you are from TikTok and this is your first time seeing my YouTube channel, please subscribe and give this video a big thumbs up to help me out with my YouTube endeavors. But anyways, I need to make a video about this because the number of DMs and comments that I get from people who suspect Munchausen by proxy is honestly quite alarming. I'm only one person and I can't save everyone, but I hope that this video will serve as a resource to help people better understand the signs of Munchausen by proxy and what to do if you suspect it's going on. However, please note that I am not a professional and this video is in no way intended to be used for legal purposes. There needs to be a better understanding of exactly how common Munchausen by proxy is. So let's look at a given statistic and make some inferences from that. According to the DSM-5, about 1% of the population has some form of fictitious disorder, meaning Munchausen's or Munchausen by proxy. And if we're assuming that about half of these people are Munchausen by proxy abusers and they're only abusing one child per person, then that means that 0.5% of children are being abused in this way. And if we let that sink in for a second, that's more than 2 children per school. Like I said, this is way more common than people would even believe. And Hollywood is not doing a good job at representing the way that it actually looks like. Munchausen by proxy exists on a spectrum and cases can be extreme, like as extreme as Gypsy Rose, subtle, or somewhere in between. But Hollywood only shows the most extreme cases. And based on the comments I've been receiving, more people need to be educated on what Munchausen by proxy really looks like. Believe me, I've been there too. I'm a mandated reporter, and in my mandated reporter training, they did not touch base once on Munchausen by proxy. And when I asked the trainer specifically, because yes I did, they were unable to answer my question. So please, send this to anyone you think needs it. Medical professionals, teachers, daycare workers. You never know who may need to hear this and who you may be saving. And please, again, keep in mind, I am not a professional. I'm only sharing my personal experiences with Munchausen by proxy and commonalities that I've noticed amongst me and other survivors' stories. If I include any statistics, like the DSM one I mentioned previously, I will include that source in the description down below. But anyways, here are the signs of Munchausen by proxy. So who is a Munchausen by proxy abuser? Most of the time when we look at Munchausen by proxy abusers, it is always the mother. I have not seen a single instance in which it was not a woman who was a Munchausen by proxy abuser. And we also have to keep in mind that in order to be a Munchausen by proxy abuser, you have to have complete control. Okay, let me rephrase that. In order to be an effective Munchausen by proxy abuser, you have to have complete control over your victim. So most of the time it is mothers. Munchausen by proxy can also be seen in animals as well, so like pet owners, but it's most of the time it's females. I've not seen a single instance in which it is a male. And another thing to look out for is most of the time Munchausen by proxy abusers work in the medical field. This is their area of expertise. Most of them gravitate towards the medical field anyways because medicine, that is where they feel like they have the most knowledge, where they get validation from others for being sort of in control of medical care. But I will note that because of this whole aspect of having to have complete control over their victims, it is very difficult for Munchausen by proxy abusers to abuse their patients. That's why when my mother was practicing nursing, I was not very concerned because she was not able to effectively abuse in the way that she was able to get away with abusing me. Also, again, I did not know she was a Munchausen by proxy abuser when she was practicing nursing. So there's that. Another sign of Munchausen by proxy is narcissistic and insecure behaviors. Munchausen by proxy stems from trauma, so you're going to see a lot of those insecure, attention-seeking, needing for a validation in those who have Munchausen by proxy. You typically will not see someone with Munchausen by proxy who isn't looking for some sort of attention out of this. And then when it comes to narcissistic tendencies, it is all about perception. You'll notice with every Munchausen by proxy case, there is a narrative around how the victim is being seen and how like the abuser wants to be seen and how they want their victim to be seen. And the narrative, you can usually find the motive in the narrative. For me personally, my narrative was girl who is physically disabled but intellectually smart and wanting to sort of overcome these physical difficulties and be smarter than she once was, if that makes sense. I've got a video on it on TikTok, but yeah. But you will notice that these abusers are obsessed with the way that they are seen, the way that they're viewed, the way that their victims are viewed. That is the most important thing to them, is how they are seen, not who they are, how other people see them. The insecure tendencies are also shown when the abuser is trying to overcompensate for their own trauma and is desperately attempting to control the situation. I read it somewhere, I can't remember where, but if I find it, I'll link it down below. Munchausen by proxy stems from a lack of control in one's life. That's not how it's caused, but that's sort of how it's triggered. And for me personally, that rang true. The point in which my mom had like the least amount of control in her life is when my Munchausen by proxy abuse got the absolute worst. So it's a desperate attempt for control. So you need to be looking for those insecure tendencies and people who feel like they don't have a lot of control in their lives. It's a disorder that's sort of revolving around control and perception. So you need to be seeing those characteristics in the abuser. I always tell people when you're looking for Munchausen by proxy, you need to be looking at the parent, not the child. I mean, sure, you'll get some clues from the child, but really the biggest difference is in the parent. Because I mean, like, obviously the child is just a child. They're just trying to go through their lives, but the parent has the disorder. They're the ones who are doing everything, so you need to be looking at them. So speaking of control and insecurity, you need to think of Munchausen by proxy abusers as the helicopter parents on steroids. They want to appear devoted and caring towards their sick child. They literally rely on other people seeing them as devoted and caring. They're often the room moms and want to appear involved as possible, but this is also an opportunity to keep tabs on their children and making sure they're staying in line. My abuser was room mom, my Sunday school teacher, my drama teacher, my summer camp nurse. Yeah, she was pretty much always there. I could never escape her. So now that we know what to look for in the abuser, here are some other signs of Munchausen by proxy. So it's going to rely on repeated illnesses. It's just going to be repeating. There's always going to be a specific diagnosis, but it will continuously change depending on who's believing them. Things don't really add up. There's a lot that just doesn't make sense. And a lot of people around them will be sort of wondering why, but will trust in the parent because the parent has such that authority figure that they know what's best for their child. So people will just sort of let things slide because like, oh, it doesn't make sense, but like they said that this is the case. So always make sure you're checking your boxes. So the child will sometimes get better when they're not around their parent, but don't count on that because a lot of the time the children are raised to believe that they're sick children and they will sort of play into this narrative. Don't blame the children for that. That's literally how they were raised. But sometimes you'll see instances in which the parents around, the child will be like over-exaggerating their symptoms in order to appease the parent. And then when the parent isn't around, they'll sort of like be better, but don't count on that because that can also appear with like actually chronically ill children as well. Parents who are talking over their child at appointments won't let the child have any sort of input in their own medical decisions, no matter how old they are. And they'll tend to like get giddy when they're talking about illnesses or like when they're in the hospital setting. They'll be a little too excited to be there. Like it won't be super obvious, but they will get some sort of pleasure out of discussing illnesses, being in a hospital setting, having all this attention on them, they will receive pleasure from that. So I know what you guys are gonna say, because I've seen this so many times. What about parents of actually chronically ill children who are just trying to advocate for their child? This is where things get tricky, because our system functions in a way where it's very difficult sometimes to get an actual diagnosis for a child who is really sick. So this is the number one difference that I've noticed between parents who are advocating for their actually chronically ill children and Munchausen by proxy abusers. And it is the fact that Munchausen by proxy abusers get validation, they get attention, they are constantly seeking that out through their child. You will see in a parent of an actually chronically ill child someone who just wants relief, just wants answers, just wants things to be better. And you can tell deep down there's that difference, because the words may be the same, but the emotions are different. As far as a Munchausen by proxy abuser, instead of relief, they don't want relief. They just want more attention, more validation. They are seeking to be heard, they are seeking attention, and they are seeking to appear devoted and as like the saint. They want to be seen as the parent taking care of their child, how much they do for their child, how much they have to sacrifice for their child. That will be emphasized constantly, and you'll notice those patterns. So that's the number one difference between the two. Okay, so now that we've gone over the signs of Munchausen by proxy, what should you be doing if you suspect Munchausen by proxy? You are going to need to document everything. You need to take a notebook and a pen, and you need to write down objectively the things that you are witnessing. You need to be writing down the dates. You need to be writing down what happened in an objective manner. So instead of like, Sally said this and this to me and it hurt my feelings, Sally walked in the room. She had a slow pace, heavy breath. She said these words to me, and she walked off quicker than usual. And you're going to sign it on the day with a pen. If you need to make any changes to that, you will put a little X with the pen and you will initial it. And this is what I learned in my mandated reporter training for documenting. Then you need to keep all of this documentation in the same place. And you need to use a notebook that would show any sort of tampering. So like a composition book, it would like fray the edges a little bit if a piece was ripped out. Keep it all in the same place, gather your evidence. Munchausen by proxy is extremely hard to prosecute, and most of the time nothing will happen unless there is concrete evidence. If you can get medical records, get them. But use this method of documentation until you have enough evidence, and tell somebody that you're making these documentations. Just keep an eye on this child. Once you have your evidence, take it, report it. If you feel like reporting before you start collecting evidence, you can, just to have it on file. Just note that it may not do much except having an evidence of your report was filed. So it may not hurt to report, just know unless there's evidence, a lot won't come from this. Oh, and if the child is in immediate danger, like please report immediately. I'm going to put some phone numbers that you can call to report, as well as in the description below for reporting child abuse. It's very important to know. Besides documenting and reporting, please be there for the kid. Be there for this child. They are likely very, very lonely, and they need some sort of support system to make it through. So be that role model for that child. They will thank you so much later. Just be there. It doesn't matter if it's about medical procedures, doesn't matter if it's any of that. They just need a friend. So if you can be that role model, if you can be that friend, it will make the world of a difference. Studies have shown that those who go through trauma are better off if they have someone that they can trust while they're experiencing this trauma. So be that person that they can trust. Now, because of the way Munchausen by proxy is, children who experience it often will believe that they are actually sick and may still believe it into adulthood. I've had people reach out to me over family members who they know experienced Munchausen by proxy, but the family member themselves who experienced it is still unaware and still completely in the dark about what they actually experienced. And that is very possible because of not only the way they were raised, but also the fact that like trauma can lead to memory loss. So what helped me personally when I was coming to these realizations is, number one, just having a friend, having someone that I could trust, just like I was talking about before, but being encouraged in a very gentle way to become more active, to become more healthy, to eat better, to exercise. Like, not pushing, obviously, but just encouraging a healthier lifestyle, because when I became healthier, I realized that my body works just like everyone else's. And that's when I started having these realizations. And a lot of people don't understand, since Munchausen by proxy is such a complicated and difficult topic, a lot of people don't even understand it. A lot of people don't even realize that how common it is, or that like people can even go through this. Even those who actually went through it still don't believe that's a possibility for them. It's a lot easier to recognize a parent is abusive before recognizing that that's something that they could actually do. So sort of making sure before you like dump all this information on them about like their experiences and how they aren't actually sick, they need to realize the type of person their abuser was before they can jump to that next conclusion. I had to go through that first. I had to realize the type of person my mother was, and then I had to take better care of myself, and then, only then, I could actually be like, yes, this is something that my mother could have done. And that's when I started talking about it in therapy. That's when I gathered my medical records. So baby steps is what I'm saying. But yeah, that is how you spot the signs of Munchausen by proxy and what to do. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below. Do you know anyone who has experienced Munchausen by proxy? Let me know. I would love to hear from you. I'm going to leave resources down below as well. Please, please, please feel free to reach out to any of these if you need help. I also included a special resource that I found recently, which is essentially a one-stop shop when it comes to Munchausen by proxy. There is a ton of articles, tons of phone numbers, things that you need when reporting. So I'm very grateful for that resource. I'm leaving it down below, and I wish you all the best of luck. Please share this with someone who needs to hear it. If this was helpful for you, give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you feel like it. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!